So, North Korea is showing off some new military toys. And the big question is, are we talking about a real game changer here? Or is this all just for show? We're gonna dig into that, and believe me, the answer is way more complicated and honestly pretty alarming than you might think. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's late 2025, and suddenly these pictures drop from North Korean state media. And the claim they're making, it's huge. They're saying this is their first ever nuclear-powered submarine. I mean, that's a massive technological leap, something that could totally redraw the military map in the Pacific. So how did people react? Well, especially online, pretty much everyone was skeptical. You gotta remember, North Korea has let's say, a history of things not quite working out. And this one Reddit comment just nailed the mood perfectly, saying, at least this one is supposed to sink. That really says it all, doesn't it? Right, so while the internet's having a good laugh, you know who wasn't laughing? Intelligence agencies. They started looking at satellite photos, pulling in other sources, and the picture they were putting together, well, it was a lot different and a lot more serious. Suddenly, it looked like the joke might actually be on us. And that brings us to the real heart of the story, the secret ingredient that made all this possible. And it has a name, the Russian connection. So you've got to be asking yourself, right? How on earth does a country as isolated and sanctioned as North Korea suddenly leapfrog like decades of technological development? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple and pretty alarming. It all comes down to a deal. It was a classic, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours deal. A quid pro quo. Here's how it went down. North Korea opens up its massive artillery stockpiles and sends millions of shells to Russia for the war in Ukraine. And what do they get back? The one thing they desperately needed but couldn't make themselves. Really critical, game-changing military tech. And just like that, their submarine program gets a massive shot in the arm. And when you look at the specifics of what Russia sent, it's just startling. We're not talking about blueprints or advice. According to South Korean intelligence, Russia sent the actual core components of a nuclear propulsion unit. We're talking the reactor, the turbine, the cooling system, reportedly ripped right out of a decommissioned Russian sub. They basically mailed them the entire engine. So why is this such a big deal? Well, nuclear propulsion is a total game changer. It uses heat from a reactor to create energy, right? But the key part is it doesn't need any air, no oxygen. For a sub, that means you can stay underwater, totally hidden, for months. The only thing that forces you to come up is when you run out of food for the crew. It's the ultimate stealth technology. But here's the thing. This is so much bigger than just one submarine. This is about North Korea's entire arsenal getting a modern makeover. And they're taking notes from some very recent conflicts. You know, analysts are starting to use this new term, an adversary entente. Think of it as a club. North Korea, Russia, and China. And they're not just trading weapons. They're sharing tech, strategy, and maybe most importantly, all the lessons they're learning from battlefields right now, especially from Ukraine. Okay, check this out. It's a perfect example. On the left, you've got Russia's Lancet 3 drone. It's been a real workhorse for them in Ukraine. Now look at the right. That's North Korea's new Kumsong drone. And the official assessment, they are, and I'm quoting here, virtually identical in appearance and intended function. I mean, come on, that's not a coincidence. That's what technology transfer looks like in the real world. And don't think this is just some side hustle for them. Kim Jong-un himself has said that drone development, especially with AI, is a top priority for modern warfare. They are watching, they are learning, and they are adapting fast. Okay, so they're getting all this cool new hardware. But this fast forward in technology creates a huge, huge new problem. Maybe the biggest strategic question of all. Who actually gets to push the button? This gets us into the super complex world of NC2. That stands for Nuclear Command and Control. Basically, just think of it as the entire system, the rules, the people, the tech, that's all designed to make absolutely sure these incredibly destructive weapons are only used exactly when, where, and how the country's leader wants them to be. But here's the catch for North Korea. Their whole system is what you'd call one-man rule. So it all leads to this one terrifying question. If an attack takes out Kim Jong-un in the opening minutes of a war, who gives the order to fire back? And that creates this unbelievably fragile single point of failure. Think about it. If your entire nuclear deterrent, Your big "don't mess with us" card can be completely wiped out just by targeting one guy. Well, it's not much of a deterrent, is it? To have a real threat, you have to be able to hit back, and that means solving this problem. This leaves them with a menu of really bad options, which you can see right here. They could stick with what's called automaticity, the classic button on Kim's desk idea, but that keeps that single point of failure. Or they could try devolution, where they name a successor. The problem there? You might just be creating a political rival for Kim. Not a great idea if you want to stay in power. Then there's pre-delegation, giving the military permission to launch under certain conditions. But wow, the risk of an accident or an unauthorized launch there is huge. So what most experts think is happening is a hybrid model. Kim keeps control of the big strategic missiles, but he gives commanders on the ground control over smaller, tactical nukes. It's probably their best bet, but it's also the most complex, and honestly, the most dangerously confusing option of them all. So all of this, the new sub, the new drones, this whole command problem, it's all led to this massive, really destabilizing, and probably totally unintended consequence, a brand new arms race in the Pacific. And this is where you see the great irony in all of this. What was North Korea's goal? To get a clear military advantage over their neighbors. But what actually happened? They've just kicked off a massive regional arms race that's basically leveling the playing field all over again. And here's the direct result. South Korea, seeing what's happening, has now announced they're going after their own fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, and they're doing it with a full backing of the United States. Just look at this timeline. It shows you how incredibly fast this whole thing has spun up. It's a classic tit for tat. Kim announces his plan back in 2021. By 2025, the deal with Russia makes it real. And before that same year is even over, South Korea responds, saying, "Us too." What's the result? The waters in the region just got a lot more crowded and a lot more dangerous. All right, so let's recap what we figured out. First, North Korea's new sub is probably the real deal, thanks to a big assist from Russia. Second, this is part of a much bigger military upgrade.